The town of Oakhaven, Maine, doesn't appear on most modern maps. It's a place where the fog clings to the pine trees like a damp shroud, and secrets are buried deeper than the permafrost. But if you walk 3 miles past the old mill, you'll find it, the wooden house. It's been empty since 1842. No smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows. Yet, every single winter, when the first blizzard hits the coast, a letter arrives. There is no mail carrier brave enough to walk that path. There is no return address. The envelope simply appears on the porch, tucked under a rusted iron bell that hasn't rung in nearly 2 centuries. To the locals, it's a curse. To the historians, it's an impossibility. But to me, it was a challenge. My name is Elias Thorne, and I'm a forensic archivist. I've spent my life debunking haunted artifacts, but the letters from the wooden house were different. They weren't just paper and ink. They felt like a pulse. In the winter of 2025, I decided to be there when the letter arrived. I wanted to see the hand that delivered mail to a ghost. The house itself was a skeleton of cedar and spruce. By 1842 standards, it was a mansion. By ours, it was a tomb. The wood had turned a silver gray, polished by decades of harsh Atlantic salt air. I set up my cameras, my thermal sensors, and my sleeping bag in the brush 50 yards away. The wind howled through the floorboards like a dying animal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, bruised shadows across the snow, the temperature plummeted. That's when the smell hit me. It wasn't the smell of decay. It was the smell of burning lavender and expensive stationery, the kind of scent that belonged in a Victorian parlor, not a rotting ruin in the middle of a blizzard. And then I saw it. Not a person, not even a shadow, just a ripple in the falling snow, a localized distortion, as if the air itself was folding inward. On the porch, the rusted iron bell gave a single, mournful clink. When I rushed forward, my boots crunching through the fresh powder, I saw it, a crisp, white envelope laying on the frozen wood. It was addressed in perfect copperplate calligraphy, to the one who waits. I picked it up. The paper was warm, not sat in the sun warm, but held by a living hand warm. I broke the wax seal, a crest of a weeping willow, and began to read the words that would change everything I knew about time, death, and the year 1842.
December 14th, 1842. My dearest Silas, the frost has claimed the windows, but it cannot touch the hearth of my heart. The letter was written by a woman named Clara. As I read her words back in my lab, the ink seemed to shimmer. This wasn't just a love letter, froze birds mid-flight, and turned the sea into jagged glass. Clara wrote about Silas, her husband, who had gone out into the storm to find medicine for their daughter. He never returned. But in her letters, Clara spoke to him as if he were just in the next room. She described the way the house began to change. She wrote about the walls thinning, claiming she could see men in strange metal carriages passing by in the distance, men from the future. I realized then that the wooden house wasn't just a building, it was a bridge. I began digging into the town's records. There was no mention of a Clara or a Silas in the official 1842 census. It was as if they had been erased from history the moment the Great Shiver hit. Yet I had the letters, I had 56 of them, collected by the town's previous librarians over the decades. Each letter followed a pattern. They started with hope. They ended with a plea. But the handwriting in the letter I found was different. It was frantic. The loops of the L's were jagged. Silas, the shadows are no longer outside. They are in the kitchen. They stand where the light doesn't reach. They are waiting for the fire to go out. If you receive this, do not come through the front door. The house has forgotten how to let people leave. I went back to the house the next night. I didn't bring cameras this time. I brought a lantern and a crowbar. If Clara was still in there, not as a ghost, but as a woman trapped in a fold of time, I had to know. As I stepped onto the porch, the air grew heavy. My digital watch began to spin wildly. 2026, 1990, 1920, 1860. It settled on a date that made my blood run cold. December 16th, 1842. I pushed the door. It didn't creak. It swung open silently into a room filled with golden candlelight and the smell of fresh bread. The house wasn't a ruin anymore. It was alive.
Stepping across that threshold was like stepping into a painting. The peeling wallpaper was suddenly vibrant, deep crimson with gold leaf patterns. The floor didn't groan. It was covered in thick woven rugs. And there, sitting by the fireplace, was a woman. She didn't look like a specter. She wore a heavy wool dress, her hair pinned back with a tortoiseshell comb. She was writing. The scratch of her quill on the parchment was the loudest sound in the room. "Clara?" I whispered. She froze. She didn't turn around. "Silas?" Her voice was a melody of pure grief. "Is that you? Or is it another shadow sent to mock me?" "I'm not Silas," I said, my voice trembling. "My name is Elias. I'm from the future. It's been nearly 200 years since you wrote that letter." Now she turned. Her eyes were wide, a piercing blue that seemed to hold the cold of the Atlantic. She looked at my Gore-Tex jacket, my flashlight, my modern boots. She didn't scream. She reached out a hand, her fingers stopping inches from my chest. "You are solid," she breathed. "The others, the ones who walk through the walls, they are like smoke. But you are real." She explained that for her, the storm had never ended. She had been stuck in this single December week for what felt like an eternity. Every time she tried to walk out the front door, she found herself walking back in through the kitchen. The house was a loop, a knot in the fabric of the universe, tied during the Great Shiver. But then, she showed me the cellar. "He is down there," she said, pointing to the heavy oak hatch. "The man who delivers the letters. He told me that if I keep writing, the bridge stays open. If I stop, the house collapses, and I disappear into the void of never was." I realized the horror of her existence. She wasn't being preserved. She was being used as an anchor. Something, some entity or force, was feeding on her longing, using her letters as a physical tether to keep this pocket of 1842 attached to our world. I walked towards the cellar door. I had to see who the postman was, but as I reached for the handle, the candles blew out. The warmth vanished. The smell of bread turned to the stench of wet, rotting wood.
In the darkness, I wasn't in the warm house anymore. I was back in the ruin. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating thick cobwebs and the skeletal remains of furniture. But Clara was still there. She was a faint, glowing outline, shivering in the center of the room. "He's coming," she whispered. "The deadline. The letter must be sent." From the cellar, a sound emerged. It wasn't footsteps. It was the sound of grinding stone. The hatch didn't open. It disintegrated into dust. Out of the darkness rose a figure that defied logic. It was tall, draped in rags that looked like yellowed parchment, and its face was a blank mask of hardened wax. It was the postman, but it wasn't a man. It was a chronivore, a creature that eats time. It ignored me. It walked straight to Clara. It held out a hand that looked like a bundle of dry twigs. Clara, with tears streaming down her face, handed it the letter I had seen her writing. "Wait!" I shouted, lunging forward. I grabbed the creature's arm. It was like grabbing an iceberg. A jolt of pure, absolute cold raced up my arm, and suddenly I saw them. Thousands of houses, thousands of Claras. All across history, there are wooden houses, places where time has snacked, where people are kept in a state of perpetual heartbreak to feed these things. The creature turned its blank wax face toward me. It didn't have a mouth, but I heard its voice in the marrow of my bones. "The equilibrium must be maintained," it vibrated. "One soul for 1 century. Without her letters, the town of Oakhaven would have been erased in 1842. Her grief is the price of their existence." I realized the terrible bargain. If I saved Clara, if I broke the loop, the entire town, the descendants, the buildings, the history of Oakhaven would vanish as if it never existed. I would be erasing thousands of lives to save one woman who should have died centuries ago. Clara looked at me. She saw the realization in my eyes. She knew. "Is the world beautiful?" she asked me. "In your time? Are there still trees? Does the sun still rise over the bay?" "Yes," I choked out. "It's beautiful." She smiled, a tragic, broken thing. "Then I will keep writing."
Stepping into the wooden house wasn't just a physical act. It was a sensory assault. The moment the door latched behind me, the modern world, the sound of my running car, the wind, the GPS signal on my watch simply ceased to exist. In its place was a silence so heavy it felt like being underwater. I clicked on my tactical flashlight, but the beam struggled to pierce the gloom. The air was thick, not with dust, but with something that felt like static electricity. As I moved through the foyer, the walls seemed to ripple. One moment they were rotting cedar, and the next they were covered in pristine velvet wallpaper that smelled of fresh paste and 19th century luxury. I wasn't just in a house, I was in a chronological glitch. I pushed deeper into the hallway, and that's when the whispers started. They didn't come from the rooms, they came from the wood itself. It was the sound of 1,000 pens scratching on parchment, a frantic, overlapping symphony of scribbling. Every board I stepped on groaned with the weight of a decade I hadn't lived through. I reached the dining room, and my breath hitched. On the table sat a full feast, steaming venison, baked bread, and red wine. But the guests were wrong. They were silhouettes made of flickering candlelight, frozen in the middle of a toast. They weren't ghosts in the traditional sense. They were echoes,
residual snapshots of a dinner party that had been happening for 183 years. Suddenly, my phone, which had been dead, lit up. A notification appeared on the screen. No number, no contact name, just a single sentence in a font that looked like old typewriter ink. The house is hungry. Do not eat the memories. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. My own memories started to feel slippery. I tried to remember my mother's face, but all I could see was the portrait of a woman in a bonnet hanging on the wall. The house was trying to overwrite me. It was trying to replace my 21st century soul with an 1842 vacancy. I realized then that the letters weren't just messages, they were anchors. Every letter Clara wrote kept this house from drifting away into the void, but it also trapped anyone who entered its orbit. I had to find her. I had to find the source of the ink before the house decided I was its next resident.
I woke up in the snow. My thermal sensors were flatlined. My cameras were melted into slag. The wooden house stood before me, silent and rotting once again. I returned to the city, but I couldn't forget her. I spent the next year researching the physics of temporal loops. I looked for a way to break the anchor without collapsing the timeline. I found nothing but dead ends and equations that ended in zero. But I realized one thing. The postman required a letter. He didn't specify who had to write it or what the emotion had to be. It just had to be longing. The next winter, I didn't go as an observer. I went as a participant. I stood on the porch as the blizzard began. I felt the lavender scent. I heard the iron bell. When the ripple in the air appeared, I didn't wait for the postman to go inside. I stepped into the distortion. I didn't find the warm parlor this time. I found a gray space, a hallway between seconds. Clara was there, her quill trembling over the paper. She was exhausted. Her soul was transparent. "Stop," I said. I handed her a letter I had written. It wasn't a love letter to a ghost. It was a letter to the future. I wrote about the beauty of 2026, about the resilience of the human spirit, about the fact that we remember her. I wrote with a different kind of longing, the longing for a world that values its past. The postman appeared. He looked at my letter. He looked at Clara. For the first time in 200 years, the creature hesitated. The paper I gave him wasn't fueled by the grief of a victim. It was fueled by the intent of an observer. It was weightier. He took my letter. He tapped the floor with his staff, and the wooden house groaned. Clara gasped. Her wool dress began to fade. She wasn't dying. She was being released. She looked at me, and for a split second, she wasn't a ghost or a prisoner. She was a woman. "Thank you," she whispered. The house collapsed, not into a ruin, but into dust. The anomaly was gone. I stood in the empty forest. The house was gone. Oakhaven was still there. I could see the lights of the town in the distance. The timeline was intact. I walked back to my car, but I felt a weight in my pocket. I reached in and pulled out a small tortoiseshell comb. It was warm. Every winter now, I still go back to that spot. There is no house anymore, but sometimes, when the wind is just right, I hear the scratch of a quill on parchment. And once, just once, I found a letter lying in the snow. It was addressed to me, and it said, "The fire is finally out. I am warm." They say time heals all wounds, but they don't tell you that time is also a predator. After I escaped the collapse of the wooden house, I drove back towards civilization. But the world didn't feel right. The colors of the neon signs in Oakhaven felt too bright. The air felt too thin. I had saved Clara, but in doing so, I had touched something that wasn't meant for human hands. I went back to my apartment in Boston, trying to resume my life as a forensic archivist. But the great shiver of 1842 followed me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find my windows frosted over in the shape of weeping willows, even in the middle of a July heat wave. I began to notice changes in the history books. I checked the digital archives of the Oakhaven census. Where there had once been a blank space, there were now records of Clara and Silas. They didn't die in the storm. They had lived. They had moved to Ohio, started a farm, and had 4 children. Their descendants were alive today, walking the streets, completely unaware that their entire existence was bought with a letter written in a house that shouldn't exist. But every debt has a collector. One evening, while I was cataloging a set of old maps, I felt that familiar scent, burning lavender and expensive stationery. I looked down at my desk. My modern ballpoint pen was gone. In its place sat a sharpened quill and a bottle of black ink that seemed to swallow the light. I looked in the mirror, and for a split second, my reflection wasn't me. It was a figure draped in yellowed parchment, with a face made of hardened, blank wax. The postman wasn't gone. He had simply found a more modern anchor. Now, I understand the true curse of the wooden house. It's not about a location. It's about the burden of memory. Someone always has to be the one to write. Someone always has to be the one to remember the things that time wants to forget. If you're listening to this, and you ever find yourself on a lonely road in Maine, and the air suddenly turns sweet and cold, run. Don't look for the house. Don't look for the girl, because the postman is always looking for a new correspondent. As for me, the snow is starting to fall inside my office. My ink is full, and I have so many letters left to write.